Just a reminder to vote in this week's Locals poll, where you decide what deck I take to Locals every single week. Without any further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and today we have the deck profile for the deck we took to Locals this past week, being Valkyrie. We did okay, about as good as I had expected. So, yeah, this is just kind of like a fun, cheesy gimmick deck. It's not supposed to be, like, competitively viable or anything. It's just for fun, and we had fun, so the deck did what it was supposed to do. So here's a quick look to what it looks like on paper, then we'll get to the card by card. Okay, so first going for Valkyrie Sigrun, we got 3 copies of her. So basically, this is one of your better high-level Valkyries in terms of being able to reuse it. So when she's summoned, you get to summon a Valkyrie from your hand or grave. So that's really nice. And you can send a continuous spell or trap you control to the grave to special summon her. But that normally doesn't come up very much. It's mainly just for the extending. Next, going into... got 1 copy of Valkyrie Erda and 1 copy of Valkyrie Brunhild. So these guys are high level, so I'm only running 1 of them because I want to either special summon them from the hand, grave, or deck. I'm never really going to be normal summoning them. So with Valkyrie Erda, she's level 8. You can only control 1, and while she's special summoned by the effect of a Valkyrie card, as long as she's on the field, all your opponent's monsters lose 1,000 attack, and anything that is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to your opponent's grave is actually banished instead. So I used this especially in the game against Dark Magician to just really load up his banished pile. So that's really nice there. Really nice disruption in terms of not being able to get things from the grave. Brunhild is unaffected by your opponent's spells. It gains 500 for each monster that your opponent controls. And then when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can have it lose 1,000 defense to keep your Valkyrie monsters from being destroyed by battle for the rest of the turn. So that's really nice. But like I said, she's level 7, so you only play 1 because you don't want to have too many of those in your hand. Following along that same kind of logic, we have 1 Erst and 1 Zweit. So they are levels 6 and 5 respectively. So Erst can banish an opponent's monster from their graveyard as a quick effect, and her attack becomes that monster's original attack till the end of the turn. So it's really good for utilizing your opponent's defeated monsters. And then while it's... or when it gets special summoned by a spell effect, you can recycle a Mischief at the Time Goddess, assuming you need to. That I don't think I've ever used that effect, though, because it normally doesn't come up. Zweit, when it gets special summoned, or excuse me, when it's just summoned, period, you get to pop a monster your opponent controls, and then after damage calculation, you can get a continuous spell back from your grave to your hand. So that can be used with the 3 goddess spells. We'll get to those later. Next, moving on, we got 3 copies of Valkyrie Drit. So this is your main normal summon. So she's a searcher of any Valkyrie card when she gets summoned. And then she also has a continuous effect that gives her 200 attack for each of your opponent's banished monsters. So that kind of plays into like Erst and Erda, being able to just banish your opponent's monsters to pump her up. Next, we got 2 copies of Valkyrie Vierte. And I guess I'll go ahead and also get Valkyrie Chariot, since they're both level 3s. So Vierte is a battle recruiter. When she gets destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Valkyrie from your deck. And then during your main phase, she can... she's kind of like a pot of duality almost. She can excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of other Valkyries you control, and she can add a normal spell or trap, and the others get sent to the grave, or if there are no cards that you can add among them, they all get shuffled back into the deck. Chariot, I only play 1 of this because it's kind of a brick unless you have your desired monster to equip. Usually that's going to be Erda, but you can also do it with Brunhild. So so basically what you can do is you can target one of your Valkyries and you can equip it, and then when the equipped monster attacks, it gives it 500 permanent attack, and then if it would be destroyed, you can destroy it instead. So I usually like to use that with Erda in order to protect her, since she does the whole banish and debuff by 1,000 thing. Next, 2 copies of Valkyrie Funft. So this one, it has a continuous effect that gives all of your Valkyries 200 attack and defense, or excuse me, just attack, for each of your opponent's banished monsters. So again, this plays into things like Erda and Erst, being able to just pump up all of your monsters this time. So getting this plus Drit on the field, Drit can actually get pretty big. It can get to like a 3,000 level 4. And then if you control another Valkyrie monster, you can send a spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard. This works with Zwite being able to recur one of your continuous spells. You can send your Goddess Skuld's Oracle to the grave, battle, get it back with Zwite, and then start the combo during your main phase 2. And finally, rounding out the monsters, 3 copies of Valkyrie Sesht. I think I'm saying that right. So basically, if she gets special summoned, you can special summon a Valkyrie monster from your deck, and then during the main phase, you can mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. This works directly with the 3 goddess spells, because you get the top 3, rearrange them, declare 1, banish 1, and then mill the other 2. So this is just a form of disruption by messing with your opponent's deck. And so yeah, that's going to be it for the monsters. Now moving on to the spells and traps. So starting off with 3 Ride of the Valkyries. And I'll go ahead and also mention the 2 Mischief of the Time Goddess as well. So Ride of the Valkyries, you special summon as many Valks from your hand with different names as possible. And then if you special summon 3 or more, then you take no battle damage. So that can be good with Vierte, so that way if you want to crash into something, you take no damage. However, it does have a drawback. During the end phase of this turn, you shuffle all monsters you control into the deck. However, you can banish it from your graveyard to search Mischief of the Time Goddess, which is how you circumvent that drawback, because Mischief of the Time Goddess, it's actually a very, very strangely worded card. So basically, neither player can activate cards or effects in response to it, and it can only be activated as Chainlink 1. So at the end of your battle phase, if all monsters you control are Valkyrie monsters, on resolution you send this card to the grave, and then it skips to the start of the battle phase of your next turn. And if you do, you can't activate Mischief of the Time Goddess until the end of that turn. So basically, you can't go Mischief of the Time Goddess, turn skip into your next battle phase, hit, and if your opponent somehow still survives, Mischief of the Time Goddess again. You can't do that. But so yeah, like I said, this is just kind of like a cheesy gimmick deck. It's kind of like an OTK sort of gimmick. It's really fun. I did pull off the Mischief of the Time Goddess OTK against Dark Magician in Game 2, and his jaw hit the floor, because he was like, what? He's like, I can't stop that. So that was fun. Moving on, we've got 1 Valkyrie's Embrace and 2 Final Light. So Valkyrie's Embrace, you target an attack position Valkyrie monster you control, and 1 monster your opponent controls, and you change your monster to defense position, and if you do, the opponent's monster gets banished. So that's really nice. I only run 1 of it, though, because it is searchable. And also because I don't want to have too many of that. I'd rather have other spells in my hand so I can swarm the field. Next, moving on to Final Light. This is basically Soul Charge. You pay life points multiples of 1,000 to special summon that many Valkyries from your grave with different names. And if you do, your opponent can special summon monsters with 2,000 or less attack from their graveyard up to the number of monsters you special summon. So giving them more bodies may sound not that great. However, if you're able to get something like Valkyrie Urda on the field, then all those monsters that have just gotten revived from the grave, if Urda's on the field and they get destroyed by battle, they will get banished instead, which feeds into your attack gaining facet of the strategy. So it does have its upsides. And I run 2 of it just because it's simply not searchable, so it increases the chances of drawing it. But at the same time, you have to have monsters engraved, so I don't want to run 3 of it. Next, moving on to the goddess spells, we got 2 of each. So 2 Skull's Oracle, 2 Verdande's Guidance, and 2 Urd's Verdict. So Skull's Oracle, when it's activated and all monsters you control are Valkyrie monsters, you get to search for Verdande. And Verdande does the same thing on activation where she searches for Urd. So, Skuld, you look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and place them back on top in any order. Verdande, you declare the top, or you declare either monster, spell, or trap, and then reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. If it's the declared type, it gets set face down to the field. Otherwise, it goes to their hand. And then Urd's Verdict. It has a continuous effect where your opponent can't target Valkyrie monsters you control, and then also they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So it's targeting and destruction protection from card effects, which is really nice. And then once per turn, you declare a card name and target a set card your opponent controls, reveal it, and then if it was the declared card, it gets banished. If you call it wrong, then you banish a card you control. However, in tandem with the other 2 goddess spells, you should never get it wrong. Hint, hint. Okay, moving on to the one-of spells now. And these are some of the more generic spells as well. We got 1 Reasoning, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 for 1, and Monster Reborn. So these are all limited, of course. And then I'm also running 1 Transmodify as well, as just kind of like a tech, I guess you could say. So Reasoning, all the Valkyrie monsters are different levels. They've got 1 through 9. There's only 1 repeat, being Chariot and Vierte. They're both level 3, but so this is a nice card. And it also just kind of serves as Ash Bait as well. Foolish Burial. Self-explanatory, send a monster from deck to grave. This works really good with Monster Reborn, so you can get something like a Sigrun to special summon 1 from your hand, and then you get 2 bodies without normal summoning, yada yada. 1 for 1, this is to special summon Sesht from the deck. So again, you can get 2 bodies without normal summoning to try to facilitate the OTK. And then Transmodify, you send a face-up monster you control to the grave as cost to special summon a monster with the same type and attribute, but 1 level higher. So one thing I like to do with this is if I normal summon Drit and I'm going second, I search a card, Transmodify, send Drit, get Zwite. Zwite will pop, and then I can start swarming the field with Ride of the Valkyries and yada yada. Okay, next, I am also running 2 copies of Twin Twisters. So it can help dump a Valkyrie into the graveyard from your hand, which is nice for graveyard setup. However, I'm also running 2 Twin Twisters simply because this deck is extremely normal summon reliant when it comes to things like Drit. And then also, if you want to think about it, Ride of the Valkyries is kind of like a pendulum summon as well. And one of the biggest things to hit pendulum summons, and by extension, following the same logic, Ride of the Valkyries, because it's kind of similar, it operates similar to a pendulum summon, is things like Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, Torrential Tribute, things like that. So Twin Twister just helps to kind of mitigate that danger. And then finally, rounding out the main deck, the final card of the deck is 1 Apple of Enlightenment. So basically, you target cards in your opponent's graveyard up to the number of Valkyrie cards Valkyrie monsters you control, and banish them. So again, this feeds into the whole thing with like Erst and Drit and Funft, plussing off of your opponent's banished monsters. And then if this set card gets either destroyed or banished by an opponent's card, you get to draw cards equal to the number of Valkyrie monsters you control +1. So it's really nice to just set this, and then it's like, oh, Harpy's Feather Duster. Oh, thanks, I draw 2, or I draw 3. So that's really nice. So yeah, that's going to be the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, this is just kind of like a fun little cheesy deck. It's like OTK, and then you can also mess with your opponent's deck with the goddess spells and everything. And like I said at the beginning, this is just a cheesy OTK deck. It's not meant to be, like competitively viable or anything. The deck did about as good as I figured it would. I have no complaints. So without any further ado, that's going to be the end of the video. Like, subscribe, vote in the locals poll, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time.